The organ being damaged never once hurts while it is happening. Not a single warning, not a single sign. And the habit that may be creating that damage right now is something you did this morning in your own kitchen. Stop. Before you open that refrigerator and reach for last night's leftovers, I need you to hear every word of what I am about to say. Because what happens inside 4 specific foods the second time heat touches them is a chemical story that most people will go their entire lives without ever being told. And the organ absorbing that damage stays completely silent the entire time it is happening. Before this video ends, I am going to give you something I call the Reheat Risk Protocol, a simple 4-question system you can use every single time you stand in front of that microwave, starting tonight. It will tell you exactly what is safe, exactly what is not, and the one refrigerator habit you need to change before you go to sleep this evening. Do not go anywhere. If you are watching this channel for the first time, tap subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because this is the kind of conversation that belongs in every doctor's office in this country, and almost never happens there. I bring you honest, research-based health information every single week, built specifically for adults over 60, who deserve more than a 15-minute appointment and a pamphlet. Now let us begin. My name is Dr. Clifford Adeshina. For over 2 decades, I have dedicated my life to one mission, giving adults over 60 the health information they deserve to have but rarely receive. Not because doctors are hiding it, not because the system is corrupt, but because a 15-minute appointment was never designed to cover everything that matters. This channel exists to fill that gap with honest information, with real research, with the kind of clarity that puts you in control of your own health. This is not a channel for generic advice. This is a channel for the truth that changes how you live, and it starts right now. And before we go any further, I need to tell you something. In over 20 years of medicine, I have sat across from patients who received a pancreatic cancer diagnosis and looked at me with genuine grief in their eyes and asked whether anything they did in their own kitchen contributed to what was now growing inside their body. I did not always have the specific answer they deserved in that moment. That changed everything about how I research and what I bring to this channel. By the time this video ends, I am going to give you the specific chemical truth about 4 foods you may have been reheating every week of your life, and the Reheat Risk Protocol that makes protecting yourself from this point forward completely straightforward. Let me ask you something honest before we go any further. When did you last think about what actually happens to food the second time it is heated? Not whether it tastes right, not whether it smells fine, but what is happening at the molecular level inside that container while the microwave counts down and you are thinking about something else entirely. Most of us were raised to believe that reheating food was safe, responsible, and even virtuous. Waste not, want not. That value is not wrong. The problem is that it was never paired with a critical piece of information, because not all foods behave the same way under a second round of heat. For most foods, reheating is completely fine. But for 4 specific foods, the chemistry that unfolds during that second exposure to heat is not neutral. It is not harmless. And it is not something the body can simply process and move past the way it handles so many other everyday exposures. According to research published in peer-reviewed scientific journals and data compiled by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the class of compounds produced when certain foods are reheated, compounds called N-Nitroso compounds, heterocyclic amines, and lipid peroxidation byproducts, are classified as probable human carcinogens. These are not compounds that cause immediate visible harm. You will not feel them. You will not taste them. They accumulate quietly inside the body over months and years of repeated weekly exposure, creating the kind of cellular damage that researchers have specifically connected to pancreatic cancer, a disease with a 5-year survival rate of approximately 12%. 12%. That number does not leave room for a second chance once symptoms appear. It makes prevention not simply the best strategy, but the only strategy that consistently and meaningfully works. And some of what drives that prevention does not begin in a hospital or a pharmacy. It begins with what you decide to do with last night's dinner. Think about that honestly before we continue. When food is cooked for the first time, natural chemical reactions occur between proteins, sugars, fats, and heat. In most cases, the compounds produced during first cooking exist in concentrations the human body can process and eliminate without meaningful harm. But during the cooling and storage phase, even inside a refrigerator, bacterial activity continues inside the cooked food. Enzymatic reactions keep running. Nitrates within vegetables continue converting into more reactive compounds called nitrites. Fats continue oxidizing. Proteins break down further. Think of food like a piece of seasoned timber. The first time you expose it to fire, it burns in a particular way. It produces compounds. Some of those compounds are manageable. The body has mechanisms to process and neutralize them at that concentration. But now imagine taking that same piece of timber, already partially burned, its internal structure already fundamentally altered by the first fire, and lighting it again. This time, the burn is different. The compounds that were only partially released during the first burn now release fully and rapidly. The natural protective elements that existed in the raw material are gone. The byproducts of this second burn are more concentrated, more chemically reactive, and more biologically damaging than anything the first burn produced. That is precisely what reheating does to certain foods at the molecular level. By the time you apply heat a second time, the food is not chemically the same food it was when you first cooked it. It has already undergone one complete chemical transformation, and now it is being subjected to a second, without the biological buffers that partially neutralized harmful compounds during first cooking. The specific compounds that concern me most, nitroso compounds, also called nitrosamines and heterocyclic amines, are both classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as probable human carcinogens. Animal studies have produced strong and consistent evidence that N-Nitroso compounds cause cellular damage to multiple organs, with the pancreas specifically identified in the research literature. Scientists have documented dietary nitrosamines as one of the pathways through which repeated long-term chemical exposure contributes to pancreatic cancer development over time. This is not speculation, this is not alarmism. This is the science that guides what I am about to tell you. Before I name a single one of these 4 foods, I need to tell you about a woman I will call Eleanor, because her story is the reason this video exists. Eleanor was 71 years old when I first met her. Retired schoolteacher, sharp, warm, and deeply thoughtful about her health. She walked 3 miles every single morning. She kept her weight steady through her 60s. She had never smoked a day in her life. Her blood pressure was what her general practitioner called textbook, perfect at every annual checkup. By every conventional measure, Eleanor was doing everything right. She was also deeply proud of her kitchen. She cooked everything from scratch. Sunday was her cooking day, generous meals that fed her household and whoever stopped by. She batch cooked deliberately. Sausages and spinach prepared on Sunday lasted into Tuesday. Fried cutlets went into the refrigerator for Wednesday and Thursday lunches. Rice was cooked in large quantities and reheated across 4 or 5 days through the week. Her mother had taught her that wasting food was a moral failure, and she carried that belief with complete conviction across 4 decades of home cooking. She felt completely well. Every checkup was unremarkable. Nothing hurt, nothing warned her. Eleanor did not notice the back pain at first. It arrived in the spring of her 71st year as a dull, low-level ache. She attributed to her years of walking finally catching up with her joints. Then came the slight yellowing in the whites of her eyes. She noticed one morning in the bathroom mirror. Then the gradual, unexplained weight loss. She initially welcomed, because she had been meaning to lose a few pounds for years. By the time she sat across from me, and I referred her to the appropriate specialist, the disease had been developing for what the oncologist estimated was between 4 and 6 years. Eleanor did not survive her second year of treatment. 4 to 6 years every Sunday. Every carefully prepared batch-cooked meal, every reheated container, every week, and not a single warning the entire time. I am sharing Eleanor's story not to frighten you, but because Eleanor had done almost everything right. She exercised. She cooked real food at home. She avoided restaurants. She was genuinely trying. She had simply never, not once in 40 years of cooking, been told what was happening chemically inside the specific foods she was reheating every single week, and how that chemistry was silently working against everything else she was doing correctly. The 4 foods that Eleanor reheated every Sunday are the same 4 I am about to name right now. The first food you must never reheat is processed meat. Hot dogs, sausages, bacon, ham, cured deli slices, smoked meats, any meat preserved using nitrates or nitrites during manufacturing. And here is what surprises most people about this category of food. These meats do not arrive in your kitchen with a clean chemical slate. They never did. The nitrites, used as chemical preservatives, react with the naturally occurring amines in meat protein during manufacturing, before the food ever reaches your refrigerator, before you have touched a single button, producing nitrosamines before you have even opened the packaging. Think of processed meat like a sponge already soaked in a chemical solution. Heating it does not clean it. It squeezes more of what is already inside directly into everything it touches. You are not beginning from neutral. You are applying heat to a food that already contains documented carcinogenic compounds at its baseline concentration. And that second application of heat accelerates a reaction that was already present and already active. Research published in peer-reviewed journals examining dietary N-Nitroso compound intake has found elevated pancreatic cancer risk associated with consistently high intake across time. Studies identifying processed and red meat consumption as a cancer risk pathway have named heterocyclic amines polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and N-Nitroso compounds produced during high-temperature cooking as the primary mutagenic mechanisms of concern. Starting tonight, if you eat processed meats, eat them once, fresh at first preparation, and never microwaved at high heat a second time. That is the single action this food requires of you. And I will show you exactly how the Reheat risk protocol handles processed meat before this video ends. Keep watching. The second food surprises nearly everyone I share it with: spinach and other high-nitrate leafy greens. I know exactly what you are thinking. Spinach is one of the most nutritionally celebrated vegetables on the planet. You have been adding it to everything for years, because every credible piece of nutritional guidance pointed you toward it. And that guidance was correct. Spinach is genuinely rich in iron, folate, magnesium, and important antioxidants. The problem is not the spinach. The problem is what spinach becomes the second time heat is applied to it. Spinach contains naturally occurring nitrates, compounds that in fresh or freshly cooked spinach are entirely benign and even beneficial for cardiovascular health and blood pressure regulation. But when cooked spinach sits in storage, even inside a refrigerator, bacterial activity and enzymatic reactions begin converting those natural nitrates into nitrites. Think of it like a slow leak in a pipe. Every hour the cooked spinach sits in your refrigerator, the leak gets slightly worse. Reheating does not fix the leak. It blows the pipe open. When you apply heat a second time, two things happen simultaneously. Heat drives additional nitrite production from remaining nitrates, and heat drives a reaction between those accumulated nitrites and the amino acids present in the spinach, producing nitrosamines. A study published in the journal Foods specifically warned against storing boiled spinach for more than 12 hours at room temperature, precisely because of this direct nitrate to nitrosamine conversion pathway. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer has confirmed that nitrosamines formed in food are established carcinogens, with documented links to gastrointestinal and pancreatic cancers. The vegetable you are reheating specifically because it is the responsible health-conscious choice is chemically becoming something that undermines the very protection it was supposed to provide. The same pathway applies to celery, beetroot, kale, and carrots, all high in natural nitrates, all subject to the same conversion under repeated heat. Starting tonight, cook leafy greens in the quantity you will eat immediately. If you have leftover cooked spinach, eat it cold in a salad tomorrow rather than reheating it. Cold temperature does not drive the nitrosamine-forming reaction. Heat does. If you are watching this right now and realizing that reheated spinach or leafy greens have been a regular part of your week for years, tap subscribe right now. Because what I am about to tell you about Food 3 is the one that most people never see coming. And the Reheat risk protocol I am going to give you before this video ends will make sure you never have to think through this alone again. I will show you exactly how the protocol handles spinach and every food that follows before we are done. Keep watching. The third food is cooking oil. More specifically, any food that was cooked in oil and is now being reheated. Most people have a vague sense that reusing cooking oil is not ideal. Very few understand the specific chemistry of exactly why, and fewer still understand how that chemistry creates a direct pathway to cancer risk at the cellular level. When a polyunsaturated cooking oil, sunflower, corn, soybean, canola, is heated to cooking temperature for the first time, a process called lipid peroxidation begins. Think of it like sandpaper. The first pass removes material. Every subsequent pass removes more, faster, more aggressively, and with less resistance than the time before. The oil's ability to resist chemical breakdown is permanently reduced after the first use. With each additional heating cycle, the oil reaches its toxic breakdown threshold faster and at lower temperatures than it did previously. The compounds produced by this process, aldehydes including acrolein and 4-hydroxynonal, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and acrylamide, are genotoxic. That word is important. Genotoxic means they cause direct damage to DNA itself, not irritation, not inflammation as a secondary effect. Direct primary damage to the genetic material inside your cells. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified acrylamide and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons among the primary products of repeated oil heating as probable human carcinogens. When you reheat fried food in a microwave, the surface temperature becomes severely uneven. Certain areas of the food are scorched at very high localized temperatures, while other areas barely warm through. Those scorched zones, often invisible, producing no visible browning you would notice while standing in your kitchen, carry the highest concentrations of all three classes of genotoxic compounds. Every reheating cycle compounds the damage of the one before it. Starting tonight, do not reheat fried foods in a microwave. If warming is necessary, use an oven at a moderate consistent temperature. Discard used frying oil after one use. The money saved by reusing it is not a reasonable trade for what accumulates in the body across years of weekly exposure. and I will show you exactly how the Reheat Risk Protocol handles this before this video ends. Stay with me. The fourth food is different from the first three in a way I want to explain carefully. The food is rice, and the mechanism of harm is not identical to the carcinogenic chemistry I described for the previous three foods. So understanding the difference matters. The risk from improperly stored and reheated rice comes from a bacterial toxin, specifically a heat-stable toxin that survives complete microwave reheating. And the connection to cancer risk operates through a pathway called chronic intestinal inflammation. When cooked rice cools at room temperature, a bacterium called Bacillus cereus, whose heat-resistant spores survive the original boiling and remain dormant inside the cooked grain, begins to multiply as the temperature drops into the bacterial growth range. Think of it like a factory that keeps running after closing time with no quality control. The bacteria inside the rice are producing toxins all night. When you reheat this in the morning, you close the factory, but everything it produced overnight is already in the finished product. The bacteria are gone, the toxins remain, fully intact, biologically active, and completely unaffected by your microwave. In the short term, these toxins cause nausea, cramping, and diarrhea. Uncomfortable, but survivable, and most people attribute those symptoms to something else entirely. The long-term picture is the part of this conversation that almost never reaches the people who need it most. Repeated low-level exposure to heat-stable bacterial toxins creates a pattern of persistent irritation and inflammatory response along the intestinal lining. Chronic inflammation of the gastrointestinal tract is one of the most consistently replicated and extensively documented risk factors for gastrointestinal cancers in all of cancer epidemiology. Every time that intestinal lining sustains an inflammatory insult and the body mobilizes a repair response, microscopic cellular damage accumulates at the site of repair. Over years and decades of weekly exposure, every large batch of Sunday rice reheated through Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, that accumulated damage progressively creates the biological environment in which abnormal cellular changes are more likely to begin and less likely to be corrected before they advance. Starting tonight, after cooking rice, begin cooling it immediately and have it refrigerated within 1 hour of cooking. Store it for no more than 24 hours. When you reheat it once only, to a fully steaming temperature throughout. Not warm in the center while the edges are hot. Never reheat it a second time under any circumstances. And going forward, cook rice in smaller quantities that more closely match what you will eat at one sitting. After 20 years of watching what happens to patients who never received this specific category of information in time, I developed something I call the Reheat Risk Protocol. I want to give it to you right now, not as a list of restrictions designed to complicate your life, but as a simple 4-question system you can carry in your mind every single time you stand in front of that microwave. Ask these 4 questions in order before you reheat anything. Was this food processed, cured, or preserved with nitrates or nitrites? If yes, do not reheat it. Eat it fresh at first preparation. Is this a leafy green or a high nitrate vegetable? Spinach, celery, kale, beetroot, or carrot? If yes, eat it cold tomorrow rather than applying heat to it a second time. Was this food cooked in oil, or is this a fried food? If yes, use an oven at a moderate consistent temperature if warming is necessary. Never reheat it in a microwave. Is this cooked rice stored for more than 24 hours, or rice that has already been reheated once? If yes to either, discard it and cook fresh. 4 questions, 30 seconds. Applied consistently every week for the rest of your life. This protocol is the practical and specific difference between accumulated chemical exposure and the prevention that the cancers I described today make absolutely necessary. I want to pause here for just a moment and speak to you directly. If you have been watching this video and quietly recognizing your own kitchen in what I have been describing, the leftover spinach reheated on Tuesday, the sausages warmed up Wednesday morning, the container of rice that has been in the refrigerator since Sunday, I want you to type the name of one food from this list that has been in your refrigerator this week. Just the name. One word in the comments, because I want to see honestly how many people watching this are in exactly the situation Eleanor was in and do not yet know it. I read every single comment on this channel, and what you type shapes every video I make after this one. Everything I am about to share with you now is general medical information based on published research and clinical experience. It is not a personal diagnosis or a replacement for care from your own doctor. Always consult your physician or qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your medication, diet, supplements, or health routine. Here is what I want you to do starting tonight, not next week. Tonight, go to your refrigerator before you go to sleep. Look honestly at what is in there. Identify any cooked spinach or leafy greens sitting for more than 24 hours. Do not reheat them tomorrow. Eat them cold or discard them, and commit to cooking leafy greens in smaller quantities going forward. If processed meats are a regular part of your weekly routine, begin transitioning toward fresh, unprocessed whole cuts of meat wherever that is realistic for your budget and habits. When you do eat processed meats, eat them once at first preparation and never reheat them at high temperature. Change how you handle cooking oil, beginning with your very next meal. Use it once for its intended purpose and discard it afterward. Never warm fried or oil-cooked foods in a microwave. Use an oven at a consistent moderate temperature when rewarming is truly necessary. Change your rice habit in one specific and immediate way. Cook quantities that more closely match what you will eat at one sitting. If you store leftover rice, refrigerate it within 1 hour of cooking. Keep it for no more than 24 hours. Reheat it once to fully steaming throughout, and never reheat it again after that first reheating. And bring this conversation to your next medical appointment. Ask your doctor specifically about your personal gastrointestinal and pancreatic cancer risk. If there is any family history of these cancers, ask whether dietary inflammatory exposure warrants additional monitoring or screening. Take the Reheat risk protocol with you written down, if it helps you frame the conversation. Let me bring everything together clearly before we close, because I want you leaving this video not with anxiety, but with absolute clarity and a specific plan. Reheated processed meats produce nitrosamines, compounds the International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies as probable human carcinogens, and that research has specifically linked to elevated pancreatic cancer risk. Never reheat them at high temperature. Reheated spinach and high nitrate leafy greens convert their naturally occurring nitrates into nitrites, and then into cancer-linked nitrosamines through a heat-driven reaction that is completely and easily preventable by eating leftover cooked greens cold the following day, rather than warming them. Reheated cooking oils and any food cooked in oil compound a lipid peroxidation process with every additional heating cycle, producing aldehydes, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and acrylamide, all of which are genotoxic compounds that cause direct damage to cellular DNA. Fresh preparation, moderate oven rewarming when necessary, and discarding used frying oil after one use are the specific responses. Improperly stored and reheated rice delivers heat-stable bacterial toxins that survive the microwave, and that, through repeated intestinal inflammation across years of weekly exposure, create the biological conditions that cancer epidemiology has consistently linked to gastrointestinal cancer development. Rapid cooling, 24-hour maximum storage, a single reheating to fully steaming temperature, and smaller batch cooking are the specific responses. The Reheat Risk Protocol, 4 questions, 30 seconds, applied consistently at the moment of decision, is the system that makes every one of these responses simple, memorable, and immediately actionable. I promised you 2 specific things at the beginning of this video. The specific chemical truth about 4 foods you may have been reheating every week, and the Reheat Risk Protocol you could apply in your kitchen starting tonight. Both of those promises have been fully and completely delivered. You chose to stay. You chose to hear every word of this. Most people will scroll past a video like this and reheat the same 4 foods tomorrow without a second thought. You are not most people. And because of what you now know, the people you cook for are meaningfully safer than they were an hour ago. I want to say something before you close this video. Something that matters more than any of the chemistry I shared today. You came here and you received something your kitchen never came labeled with. You now understand what reheating does to processed meat at the chemical level, and exactly why the second application of heat changes everything about what you are consuming. You understand why the spinach cooked last night is significantly safer eaten cold tomorrow than warmed on the stove. You understand what happens to cooking oil every time heat touches it a second time. And you know precisely how to store and handle rice from this night forward in a way that protects your intestinal health not just tonight, but across the decades ahead. That is not a list of facts. That is a fundamentally different way of standing in your own kitchen. You are not the same person who pressed play on this video. You see something now that was completely invisible to you before. And the people you cook for, the people who sit at your table and eat what your hands prepare, are safer because you chose to be here today. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because every single week I bring you another conversation exactly like this one, honest, grounded in published research, and built specifically for adults over 60 who deserve far more than 15 minutes and a generic pamphlet. Next week I am going to cover something that surprised even me when I looked at the research. 5 foods that are routinely marketed as heart-healthy for adults over 60, and that the latest studies suggest are doing something very different inside the body. If you are eating any of them right now, you need to see that video before your next grocery run. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss it. And before you go, one final question waiting for you in the comments. Starting tonight, which one of these 4 kitchen habits are you changing first? Tell me specifically. because your answer shapes what I cover in the weeks ahead, and I read every single one. The people who needed this information the most are the ones who will never search for it. Make sure the ones you love do not have to. Your body has been working for you every single minute of your life without asking for anything in return. The least you can do is give it the truth. I am Dr. Clifford Adeshina, and I will see you in the next one.